Eric Tucker's life changes forever when he stumbles upon a stasis pod containing an infant Benzite while scavenging a derelict alien ship in the Orion Nebula. The 35-year-old interstellar cargo pilot knows he should report the discovery immediately, but something stops him. He stares at the tiny blue-skinned creature, its large eyes closed in suspended animation, and makes a decision that will alter the course of galactic history. Ignoring the strict regulations against alien contact, Eric carefully extracts the pod from the ship's wreckage. His hands shake as he disables the stasis field, cradling the infant in his arms. He names her Willa after his late mother and vows to protect her at all costs. Years pass, and Willa grows into an extraordinary young woman. Her intelligence surpasses anything Eric has ever encountered, human or alien. She absorbs information at an unprecedented rate, mastering complex theories and advanced technologies with ease. Eric watches in awe as his adopted daughter manipulates holographic interfaces and deciphers alien encryption codes as if they were child's play. On Willa's 18th birthday, Eric notices a startling change. Her once blue skin begins to shimmer, transforming into a radiant, iridescent hue that seems to pulse with an inner light. The sight of her newfound beauty stirs unfamiliar feelings in Eric, complicating their relationship in ways he never anticipated. Their world is thrown into chaos when a massive Benzite war fleet suddenly appears in the solar system. The alien ships, sleek and bristling with weaponry, take up positions around Earth. Panic spreads across the planet as governments scramble to respond to the apparent invasion. A transmission from the Benzite flagship rocks Eric to his core. The aliens demand the immediate return of their lost princess, Willa. Earth's leaders, unaware of her existence, prepare for war, mobilizing every weapon in their arsenal. Eric's heart races as he realizes the true magnitude of his actions all those years ago. Willa isn't just any Benzite. She's the hereditary queen of their vast empire, destined to rule over 10,000 worlds. The revelation stuns them both, forcing them to confront the reality of Willa's origins and the impossible choice that lies before them. The Benzite ultimatum is clear: return Willa or face total annihilation. Earth's military stands no chance against the advanced alien fleet. Millions will die if Eric doesn't hand over the young woman he's raised as his own. Willa, torn between her love for Eric and the weight of her newfound heritage, proposes a daring plan. She'll infiltrate the Benzite fleet, claim her throne, and use her position to forge an alliance between Earth and the Empire. It's a risky gambit, but it might be the only way to save both civilizations from destruction. As they prepare to leave Earth, Eric becomes aware of a rival faction within the Benzite hierarchy. These power-hungry aliens seek to eliminate Willa and seize control of the Empire for themselves. The stakes couldn't be higher. Not only must they navigate through hostile territory and overcome cultural barriers, but they must also evade multiple assassination attempts. Eric's piloting skills and human ingenuity will be put to the ultimate test as he helps Willa reach the Benzite flagship. As they make final preparations, he grapples with the realization that his feelings for Willa have grown far beyond paternal. The fate of two civilizations hangs in the balance as Eric and Willa embark on their perilous journey to claim her birthright and prevent an interstellar war that could annihilate humanity. Eric's hand trembled as he input the launch coordinates into his ship's navigation system. The weight of their impending departure from Earth pressed down on him, but a sudden alert on his communication panel shattered his focus. "Attention all spacecraft," a stern voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Earth Defense Command. A planet-wide lockdown is now in effect. All launches are prohibited until further notice. Violators will face severe consequences." Eric's heart sank as he realized their carefully laid plans had just been obliterated. He turned to Willa, her iridescent skin shimmering with anxiety. "We need a new plan," he said, his mind racing. "I know someone who might be able to help us." Within hours, they were speeding across the South American continent in a low-altitude skimmer, expertly piloted by Eric to avoid detection. The barren landscape of the Atacama Desert stretched before them as they approached a hidden valley. "Marcus," Eric explained as they neared their destination, "is an old friend from my cargo running days. He's been working on some, let's say, unconventional launch methods. As they crested a ridge, a camouflaged hangar came into view. A tall, weather-beaten man emerged, shielding his eyes from the sun. "Eric Tucker," Marcus called out, a wry smile on his face. "I had a feeling I'd be seeing you soon." Inside the facility, Marcus led them to a sleek experimental shuttle unlike anything Eric had ever seen. "She's designed for stealth launches," Marcus explained, running a hand along the craft's smooth hull. "But there's a catch. She can only carry two, the pilot and one passenger." Eric's stomach clenched as the implication sank in. He looked at Willa, her large eyes filled with understanding and fear. "No," she said firmly, gripping Eric's arm. "I won't leave you behind." Eric cupped her face in his hands, his throat tight with emotion. "Willa, listen to me. This is bigger than us. You have to reach that fleet and stop this war before it starts. I'll find another way up there, I promise." Over the next few days, Eric poured every ounce of his piloting knowledge into Willa. They spent hours in Marcus's simulator, running through scenarios and perfecting her skills. As they worked in close proximity, the air between them seemed to crackle with an unspoken tension. Meanwhile, Marcus worked tirelessly to modify the shuttle's systems. "Eric," he called out one evening, excitement in his voice, "you need to see this." He showed them a readout of Willa's unique energy signature. "If I'm right, this could allow her to interface directly with Benzite tech. It could be the key to everything." Their progress was interrupted by a distant rumble. Marcus rushed to a monitoring station, his face grim. "We've got company," he announced. "Earth forces, closing in fast. We need to launch now." In a flurry of activity, they made final preparations. Eric's heart pounded as he helped Willa into her flight suit, their fingers brushing against each other. As the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, Eric made a decision. He pulled Willa close and kissed her deeply, years of unspoken feelings pouring out in that moment. "Go," he whispered, pushing her towards the shuttle. "Save us all." Before she could protest, Eric sealed the shuttle door. He watched as Marcus initiated the launch sequence, the experimental craft rising silently into the night sky. The facility's doors burst open as Earth's military forces stormed in. Eric raised his hands, his mind already formulating a plan to protect Willa's identity and mission. High above, cloaked from detection, Willa's shuttle broke through the atmosphere. She gripped the controls, steeling herself for the challenges ahead. As the massive Benzite warfleet loomed before her, Willa took a deep breath. Everything Eric had taught her, everything she had learned about herself, it all came down to this moment. With dedication in her eyes, Willa guided the shuttle towards the imposing Benzite flagship. The fate of two civilizations rested on her shoulders, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as Willa guided it towards the imposing Benzite warfleet. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She took a deep breath, centering herself as she remembered Eric's final lessons. "Steady hands, clear mind," she whispered, activating the cloaking technology Marcus had integrated into the craft. The shuttle's exterior shimmered, then seemed to vanish entirely. Willa marveled at the ingenuity of human engineering, grateful for the edge it gave her as she approached the alien armada. The Benzite vessels loomed before her, their sleek hulls adorned with pulsating bioluminescent patterns. Willa's eyes widened as she took in the sheer scale of the fleet. Each ship dwarfed even the largest human spacecraft, their designs unlike anything she had ever seen. Carefully, she maneuvered through the flotilla, searching for a way to board the flagship undetected. Her hands moved deftly over the controls, applying all the skills Eric had drilled into her during their intense training sessions. As Willa focused on her approach, her thoughts drifted to Eric. She hoped he had managed to evade capture, but a gnawing worry persisted in the back of her mind. Back on Earth, Eric found himself in a stark interrogation room, facing a panel of stern-faced military officials. His mind raced as he carefully crafted his responses, walking a delicate line between truth and deception. "Mr. Tucker," a gruff colonel barked, "explain again how you came to possess this alien technology." Eric leaned forward, his face a mask of earnest cooperation. "As I said, I discovered a cache of advanced tech while on a routine cargo run near the Orion Nebula. I've spent years studying it, trying to understand its capabilities." He omitted any mention of Willa, instead spinning a tale of solo exploration and scientific curiosity. As the questioning continued, Eric realized he needed to find a way to help Willa from Earth. His eyes darted around the room, searching for any opportunity to turn the situation to his advantage. In space, Willa's vigilant scanning paid off. She spotted a maintenance hatch on the Benzite flagship, barely visible against the vast hull. With practiced precision, she guided the shuttle alongside the massive ship, her breath catching as she prepared to make contact. The docking procedure was nerve-wracking, each moment fraught with the possibility of detection. Willa's hands trembled slightly as she engaged the magnetic locks, securing the shuttle to the alien vessel. She paused, gathering her courage before opening the airlock. The reality of her situation hit her full force. She was about to step into an alien world, armed only with her wits and the training Eric had given her. "I can do this," Willa whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hiss of the airlock cycling. The hatch slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. Willa slipped inside, her iridescent skin adapting to the bioluminescent environment. She moved cautiously, her senses on high alert for any sign of the Benzite crew. As she navigated the winding passageways, Willa encountered her first Benzite crew members. She pressed herself against a wall, holding her breath as two tall, blue-skinned aliens walked past, engaged in conversation. Their language was unlike anything she had ever heard, a series of clicks and whistles that left her feeling overwhelmed. The encounter drove home a stark reality. Despite her Benzite heritage, Willa's upbringing on Earth had left her woefully unprepared for the intricacies of Benzite society. She would need to adapt quickly if she hoped to succeed in her mission. Pushing forward, Willa found herself in a vast chamber dominated by a central computer terminal. The holographic displays pulsed with alien script, but something about it called to her. Drawn by an instinct she couldn't explain, Willa approached the terminal. Her fingers hovered over the interface, and suddenly, information began to flow. Willa gasped as she accessed the ship's systems, her innate understanding of Benzite technology surpassing even her own expectations. What she discovered sent a chill down her spine. The Benzite Empire was far from the united front it presented to Earth. Multiple factions vied for control, their political maneuvering threatening to tear the Empire apart. At the center of it all was High Admiral Zix, the leader of the faction currently in power. Willa's eyes widened as she read Zix's plans. He intended to use Earth as a bargaining chip, leveraging the threat of invasion to consolidate his control over the Empire. As Willa absorbed this crucial information, a new transmission caught her attention. Her heart leapt as she recognized the encoded message. It was from Eric. Quickly decrypting the message using the cipher they had developed in her childhood, Willa found vital information about Benzite politics and advice on asserting her claim to the throne. She felt a surge of affection for Eric, marveling at his resourcefulness and dedication. Armed with this new knowledge, Willa began formulating a plan to reveal herself to the Benzite leadership. She knew she would need allies, but in this alien environment, trust was a scarce commodity. As if in answer to her thoughts, a sound behind her made Willa spin around. She found herself face to face with a young Benzite, her large eyes wide with surprise. Willa tensed, prepared for hostility, but was taken aback by the Benzite's reaction. "My princess," the young alien whispered, dropping to one knee. "I am Leary, and I pledge my loyalty to you." Willa blinked, stunned by this unexpected turn of events. As Leary rose, her eyes shining with devotion, Willa realized she had found her first ally in this strange new world. "Leary," Willa said, her voice filled with quiet authority, "I need your help to reach the command center. Will you guide me?" The young Benzite nodded eagerly, and together they set off through the winding corridors of the flagship. As they moved, Willa shared her plan with Leary, who listened intently, offering insights into Benzite protocols and customs. Their progress was swift but cautious. Along the way, they encountered other Benzites who recognized Willa as their lost princess. A small group of loyal supporters began to form, each pledging their allegiance to the rightful heir. As they neared the command center, the atmosphere grew tense. Guards loyal to High Admiral Zix blocked their path, their weapons raised threateningly. Willa stepped forward, her iridescent skin glowing with an otherworldly light. She raised her hands, showing she was unarmed. but her voice rang out with unmistakable authority. "I am Willa, rightful heir to the Benzite throne," she declared, her words echoing through the corridor. "Stand down and let us pass." The guards hesitated, confusion evident in their postures. Seizing the moment, Willa and her supporters surged forward. A brief but intense struggle ensued, with Willa using the combat skills she had learned on Earth to subdue the guards without causing serious harm. With the path now clear, Willa took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. She exchanged a determined look with Leary and her other allies, then stepped forward to face her destiny. The doors to the command center loomed before them, the last barrier between Willa and her birthright. As she reached out to open them, Willa silently thanked Eric for everything he had taught her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she was ready to face them. The doors to the command center slid open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. High-ranking Benzite officers huddled around holographic displays, their agitated clicks and whistles filling the air. At the center of it all stood High Admiral Zix, his towering frame radiating authority and awe-inspiring rage. As Willa stepped into the room, a hush fell over the assembled aliens. Zix's eyes narrowed, his bioluminescent patterns flashing in a rapid sequence that Willa instinctively recognized as a challenge. "So the lost princess returns," Zix sneered, his voice a harsh rasp. "How convenient for you to appear now when our victory over Earth is at hand." Willa stood tall, her iridescent skin pulsing with tenacity. "There will be no victory, Admiral. This war ends now." Zix's face contorted with fury. He barked a series of commands, his fingers flying over a nearby console. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, red lights flashing in warning. "What have you done?" Willa demanded, rushing to the nearest display. Leary gasped beside her. "He's activated the fleet's main weapons. They're targeting Earth." Willa's mind raced. She had mere minutes to stop a catastrophe that would destroy any hope of peace between their civilizations. Her fingers danced across the alien interface, her unique energy signature allowing her to access systems that should have been beyond her reach. As she worked, Willa became acutely aware of the ticking clock. Each second that passed brought Earth closer to annihilation. She drew upon every scrap of knowledge Eric had imparted, combining it with her innate understanding of Benzite technology. "There!" she exclaimed, her voice tight with concentration. "I've isolated the firing protocols, but I need to—" A blast of energy scorched the console beside her. Willa ducked, narrowly avoiding Zix's attack. The High Admiral advanced, his weapon trained on her. "Step away from the controls," he snarled. "I will not allow a half-breed imposter to disrupt our destiny." Leary and the other loyal Benzites moved to protect Willa, but she waved them back. Time was running out, and she couldn't risk a firefight damaging the system she needed to access. Willa raised her hands slowly, her mind working furiously to find a solution. As Zix approached, gloating in his apparent victory, she noticed a familiar pattern in the ship's power fluctuations. It was similar to a weakness she and Eric had once exploited in a simulation. In a lightning-fast move, Willa slammed her hand onto a specific sequence of controls. The ship's gravity generators inverted for a split second, sending everyone tumbling. Zix's shot went wide, and Willa used the moment of confusion to complete her override. The alarms fell silent, and the weapon systems powered down. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the command center. Willa straightened, her voice ringing out with authority. "The attack on Earth has been aborted. This war is over." The Benzite crew looked to her with a mixture of awe and respect. Even those who had been loyal to Zix seemed swayed by her display of skill and compassion. Zix, however, was far from defeated. He struggled to his feet, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You may have stopped the attack, but you have no right to command this fleet. I challenge you to Kralvor, the ritual combat of succession." A murmur ran through the assembled Benzites. Willa hesitated, unfamiliar with the term, but recognizing its significance from the reactions around her. Leary leaned in close, whispering urgently, "My queen, Kralvor is an ancient rite. To refuse would be to forfeit your claim to leadership. You must accept." Willa nodded, her face set with grit. "I accept your challenge, High Admiral Zix. Let Kralvor decide the true ruler of the Benzite people. As preparations for the ritual combat began, Willa found herself whisked away to a private chamber. Lyri and a group of loyal supporters surrounded her, offering hurried instructions on Benzite combat techniques and the intricacies of Kralvor. The duel will take place in the central arena, Lyri explained, helping Willa into a sleek ceremonial armor. The entire fleet will be watching via holographic projections. You must prove not only your strength, but your worthiness to lead. Willa absorbed the information, her mind working to integrate these new techniques with the fighting skills she had learned on Earth. As she practiced a series of fluid movements, combining Benzite precision with human adaptability, she felt a sense of rightness. This hybrid style was uniquely hers, a physical representation of her dual heritage. The call to battle came all too soon. Willa strode into the vast central arena, its crystalline walls reflecting the bioluminescent patterns of thousands of watching Benzites. Across the arena stood Zix, resplendent in his own battle armor, his eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. As the ritual combat began, Willa found herself tested as never before. Zix's experience and raw power were formidable, his attacks coming in a relentless barrage. But Willa's unconventional style began to turn the tide. She weaved and dodged, her movements unpredictable, blending human agility with Benzite strength. The duel raged on, a dance of light and shadow. Willa's iridescent skin shimmered with exertion, her patterns shifting in ways that seemed to disorient her opponent. She could feel the tide of the battle turning, the watching Benzites leaning in with growing excitement. In a sudden flurry of movement, Willa saw her opening. She feinted left, then dropped low, using a human wrestling move to sweep Zix's legs. As he stumbled, she applied pressure to a specific point on his neck, a Benzite technique Lyri had hurriedly taught her. Zix froze, his body locked in place by the pressure point. The arena fell silent as Willa stood over him, her voice clear and strong. "Yield," she commanded. For a moment, it seemed Zix might refuse. Then, with a growl of frustration, he slumped in defeat. "I yield," he rasped. A thunderous cheer erupted from the watching Benzites. Willa felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew this was only the beginning. As she turned to address her new subjects, her eyes caught a familiar figure in the crowd. Eric stood at the edge of the arena, his face a mixture of pride and concern. Their gazes locked, a moment of connection amidst the alien surroundings. Willa's heart leapt, but she forced herself to focus on the task at hand. Raising her voice to be heard over the celebrations, Willa addressed the fleet. "People of the Benzite Empire, I stand before you as your new queen. The war with Earth is over. Together we will forge a new path, one of peace and cooperation between our civilizations." As the Benzites bowed to their new ruler, Willa felt the weight of her responsibilities settling on her shoulders. She had won the battle, but the real challenges were just beginning. With Eric's steady presence nearby and her newfound allies at her side, Willa prepared to face the complex future that awaited her as Queen of the Benzite Empire. Empire. The words echoed in her mind as the gravity of her new role settled upon her. Willa took a deep breath, steadying herself against the sudden wave of responsibility. As the cheers of the Benzites began to subside, the command center erupted into a flurry of activity. Officers rushed to their stations, eager to carry out the orders of their new queen. Willa felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Lyri, her eyes shining with devotion. "My queen," Lyri said, her voice filled with reverence. "What are your orders?" Willa hesitated for a moment, then straightened her posture. "First, we need to establish communication with Earth. We must inform them of the change in leadership and our desire for peace." As Lyri nodded and moved to carry out her command, Willa's gaze fell upon Eric, who still stood at the edge of the arena. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. With a subtle gesture, Willa motioned for him to approach. Eric made his way through the crowd of Benzites, who parted before him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. As he reached Willa's side, she could see the questions burning in his eyes. "Eric," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of both affection and authority. "I need your help. You understand Earth better than anyone here. Will you stay and assist me as we navigate this transition?" Eric's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded without hesitation. Of course, Willa. Whatever you need. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Willa found herself constantly moving between meetings with high-ranking Benzite officials, briefings on the state of the fleet, and attempts to establish diplomatic channels with Earth. Through it all, Eric remained by her side, offering insights and suggestions that proved invaluable. As the ship's cycle shifted into what passed for night, Willa finally found a moment of respite. She stood alone in her new quarters, a vast chamber that seemed to pulse with the living energy of the ship. The weight of her crown, a delicate circlet of bioluminescent material, felt heavy on her brow. A soft chime announced a visitor. "Enter," Willa called, turning to see Eric step through the doorway. "I thought you might want some company," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "How are you holding up?" Willa allowed herself a small smile. "It's overwhelming. There's so much to learn, so many decisions to make. I feel like I'm barely treading water." Eric moved closer, his presence a comforting anchor in the sea of her new responsibilities. "You're doing amazingly, Willa. The way you handled that situation with the weapon systems, how you won the Kralvor. You were born for this." "Was I?" Willa asked, a note of vulnerability creeping into her voice. "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong in either world. Too Benzite for Earth, too human for here." Eric reached out, gently taking her hand. "That's what makes you unique. You understand both worlds. You can bridge the gap between them." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the universe seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Willa felt a surge of emotion, a mix of gratitude, affection, and something deeper that she wasn't quite ready to name. The moment was broken by an urgent knock at the door. Leary's voice came through, tense and hurried. "My queen, we've detected unauthorized access to key systems on several ships in the fleet. It appears to be sabotage." Willa and Eric exchanged a look of alarm. "I'm on my way," Willa called out, already moving towards the door. As they rushed through the corridors towards the command center, Eric kept pace with Willa. "Sabotage?" he asked, his voice low. "Could it be supporters of Zix?" Willa nodded grimly. "It's possible. We need to contain this quickly before it spreads." They burst into the command center, where a scene of controlled chaos greeted them. Benzite officers were frantically working at their stations, trying to isolate and neutralize the threat. "Report," Willa commanded, her voice cutting through the din. Leary stepped forward, her normally composed features tight with concern. "My queen, we've identified a group calling themselves the Purists. They're claiming that your human upbringing has tainted the royal bloodline. They're attempting to disrupt key systems across the fleet." Willa's mind raced, analyzing the situation. She turned to Eric, an idea forming. "Eric, you've dealt with system failures on cargo ships before. Could those skills be applied here?" Eric's eyes lit up with understanding. "Absolutely. If we can isolate the affected systems and reroute essential functions, we can buy ourselves time to root out the saboteurs." Willa nodded, turning back to her officers. "Listen to Eric. Implement his suggestions and coordinate with all ships in the fleet. We need to stabilize our systems and track down these Purists." As the Benzite crew began to work with Eric, Willa felt a flutter of pride. His innovative approach was already making a difference, and she could see the grudging respect in the eyes of even the most skeptical officers. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly to counter the Purists' attacks. Willa moved between stations, offering encouragement and making swift decisions when needed. Eric's expertise proved invaluable, his unorthodox solutions complementing the Benzite's more structured approach. Just as they seemed to be gaining the upper hand, a new alert blared through the command center. Leary's voice rang out, tight with urgency. "My queen, we're detecting a small fleet of Earth vessels approaching our position." Willa's heart raced as she rushed to the main view screen. There, displayed in crisp holographic detail, was a formation of Earth ships led by a familiar vessel, Admiral Chen's flagship. Eric moved to stand beside her, his face a mask of concern. "This complicates things," he said softly. Willa nodded, her mind already working through the implications. She had to find a way to deal with this new development while still addressing the internal threat of the Purists. The challenges of her new role as Queen of the Benzite Empire were mounting, and she knew that her next decisions would be crucial in shaping the future of both her people and her relationship with Earth. Taking a deep breath, Willa squared her shoulders and turned to address her crew. "Prepare to receive a transmission from the Earth fleet," she commanded, "and alert our security teams. We need to be ready for anything." As the command center buzzed with renewed activity, Willa exchanged a look with Eric. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Together. As Willa turned back to face the view screen, her mind raced with possibilities and potential strategies. "Open a channel to the Earth fleet," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The communications officer nodded, and a moment later, Admiral Chen's stern visage appeared on the screen. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force," he began, his eyes narrowing as he took in Willa's appearance. "We demand an explanation for the sudden cessation of hostilities and the apparent change in Benzite leadership." Willa stepped forward, her regal Benzite attire shimmering under the lights of the command center. "Admiral Chen, I am Queen Willa of the Benzite Empire. I propose we meet face-to-face to discuss these developments. You are welcome to dock your ship and join us aboard the flagship." Admiral Chen's expression remained guarded, but after a moment's consideration, he nodded. "Agreed, we'll be docking shortly." As the transmission ended, Willa turned to Eric. "We need to prepare for this meeting. It could determine the future of both our peoples." Eric nodded, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. "I'll work with Leary to ensure security is tight. We can't risk any purist interference during such a crucial moment." The next hour was a flurry of activity as Willa and her team prepared for the Earth delegation's arrival. The flagship's docking bay was transformed into a makeshift diplomatic reception area, with both Benzite and human security personnel standing at attention. When Admiral Chen and his entourage stepped off their shuttle, the tension in the air was palpable. Willa stood tall, flanked by Eric and Leary, as she greeted the Earth representatives. "Welcome aboard, Admiral Chen," Willa said, her voice carrying both warmth and authority. "I'm glad we have this opportunity to speak directly." Admiral Chen's eyes darted between Willa and the Benzite officers surrounding her. "Your appearance is unexpected, Your Majesty. I believe we require a thorough explanation of recent events." Willa nodded, gesturing towards a nearby conference room. "Of course. Please, let's speak in private where we can discuss matters fully." As they settled into the conference room, Willa began to explain her unique heritage, her human upbringing, and her recent discovery of her Benzite royal lineage. She outlined her vision for peace between Earth and the Benzite Empire, emphasizing the potential benefits of cooperation between their civilizations. Admiral Chen listened intently, his brow furrowed. "While your story is remarkable, Your Majesty, you must understand our concerns. This sudden shift in power could be seen as a threat to Earth's sovereignty." Before Willa could respond, a violent tremor shook the room. Alarms blared throughout the ship as the sound of distant explosions reached their ears. "We're under attack," Leary shouted, her hand flying to her communication device. Chaos erupted as Benzite guards rushed to protect Willa and the Earth delegation. Eric sprang into action, his experience with ship systems proving invaluable. "We need to seal off this section," he called out, racing to a nearby control panel. As Willa coordinated with her security team, she noticed Admiral Chen watching her closely. Despite the crisis unfolding around them, she maintained her composure, issuing clear and decisive orders. "Eric, status report," Willa demanded as she moved to join him at the control panel. "Multiple explosions across the ship," Eric replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "It looks like the purists have launched a coordinated attack. We've got hull breaches in sectors 7 and 9, but I'm rerouting power to emergency force fields." Willa turned to Admiral Chen, who was helping one of his injured officers. "Admiral, we need to work together if we're going to survive this. Will you help us?" For a moment, Admiral Chen hesitated. Then, seeing the commitment in Willa's eyes, he nodded. "What do you need?" "Your expertise," Willa replied. "Help us coordinate a joint response. We need to secure the ship and root out these saboteurs." Over the next few hours, Willa, Eric, and Admiral Chen worked tirelessly to stabilize the situation. Their combined efforts, Willa's innate understanding of Benzite systems, Eric's innovative problem-solving, and Chen's tactical experience, proved to be a formidable combination. As the immediate danger subsided, Willa made a bold decision. "Admiral Chen," she said, her voice firm, "I invite you and a small contingent from Earth to accompany me to the Benzite homeworld. This will allow you to witness our culture firsthand and help forge a stronger alliance between our peoples." Admiral Chen considered the offer, his expression thoughtful. "That's a significant gesture, Your Majesty. I accept on behalf of Earth." As preparations for the journey began, Eric pulled Willa aside. "I've been working with Leary to enhance security for your personal ship," he explained. "We've integrated some human tech with Benzite systems. It should give us an edge if we face any more purist attacks." Willa smiled, grateful for Eric's initiative. "Thank you, Eric. I don't know what I'd do without you." Their eyes met, and for a moment the chaos around them faded away. Willa felt a surge of emotion, a mix of gratitude, affection, and something deeper. But before she could act on these feelings, Leary's urgent voice interrupted them. "My queen, we've received intelligence suggesting a possible infiltrator among the Earth delegation," Leary reported, her voice low and tense. Willa's eyes widened, and she exchanged a worried glance with Eric. "We'll need to be extra vigilant during our journey," she said, "but we can't let this derail our mission for peace." As final preparations were made, Willa's ship, along with a small fleet of Benzite and Earth vessels, prepared to depart from the flagship. The journey to the Benzite homeworld was about to begin, fraught with both promise and peril. Standing on the bridge of her personal ship, Willa watched as the stars stretched into streaks of light, signaling their entry into faster-than-light travel. Beside her, Eric stood at attention, his presence a comforting constant amidst the uncertainty that lay ahead. As they plunged deeper into Benzite space, Willa couldn't shake the feeling that this journey would test her in ways she had yet to imagine. The future of two civilizations rested on her shoulders, and with the threat of purist saboteurs looming, she knew that every decision she made could have far-reaching consequences. The ship's sensors began to pick up strange readings, indicating they were approaching the outer defenses of the Benzite homeworld. Willa straightened her posture, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The true test of her leadership was about to begin. The true test of her leadership was about to unfold in ways she couldn't have imagined. As they approached the Benzite homeworld, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Leary's voice crackled over the comm system. "My queen, we've detected a disturbance in the Earth delegation's quarters." Willa exchanged a worried glance with Eric. "The infiltrator," she said, her voice tight with concern. They rushed to the security control room, where monitors displayed a chaotic scene. Admiral Chen was being held at gunpoint by a member of his own delegation. "It's Ensign Reeves," Eric said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the footage. "He must be the purest sympathizer." Willa's mind raced, analyzing the situation. She couldn't allow this crisis to derail their mission, not when they were so close to the Benzite homeworld. Drawing on her unique blend of human ingenuity and Benzite intuition, an idea began to form. "Eric, can you access the environmental controls for that section of the ship?" she asked, her eyes never leaving the monitor. Eric nodded, his fingers flying over the control panel. "What do you have in mind?" "We're going to create an advantage," Willa said, a determined glint in her eye. "Adjust the atmospheric composition, increase the nitrogen levels by 0.3%, and reduce oxygen by the same amount." Eric looked at her, understanding dawning on his face. "It'll be imperceptible to humans, but for Benzites—" "Exactly," Willa confirmed. "It'll cause slight disorientation in Benzite physiology, enough to give Admiral Chen an edge." As Eric implemented the changes, Willa watched the monitors intently. Within minutes, she noticed a subtle shift in the purist's posture. His movements became slightly less coordinated, his attention wavering. Admiral Chen, ever the skilled tactician, sensed the change. In a swift motion, he disarmed his captor, subduing him with a well-placed strike. Willa let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Send security to secure the prisoner," she ordered, relief evident in her voice. With the immediate threat neutralized, Willa turned her attention to their arrival. The ship began its descent towards the Benzite capital, the planet's swirling atmosphere giving way to reveal a landscape that took Willa's breath away. Towering spires of iridescent material stretched towards the sky, their surfaces shifting and flowing like liquid metal. The city seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, a perfect blend of nature and advanced technology. As the ship touched down on a crystalline landing pad, Willa felt a surge of emotion. This was her ancestral home, a place she had only dreamed of. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as the ship's ramp lowered. Eric stood beside her, a reassuring presence. "Ready?" he asked softly. Willa nodded, her eyes fixed on the welcoming delegation that awaited them. "As I'll ever be." They stepped out onto Benzite soil, the air thick with unfamiliar scents and a slight metallic tang. A group of elder statesmen approached, their long robes shimmering in the planet's unique light. One of them, a tall Benzite with piercing silver eyes, stepped forward. "Welcome home, Queen Willa," he said, his voice carrying a hint of skepticism. "I am Arch-Counselor Vex. We have much to discuss." Willa inclined her head respectfully, aware of the delicate political situation. "Thank you, Arch-Counselor. I look forward to our discussions." As they were led towards the towering governmental complex, Willa couldn't shake the feeling that Vex's welcome held a hidden edge. She would need to tread carefully in the coming days. The next few hours were a whirlwind of introductions and explanations. Willa found herself recounting her unique heritage and vision for the future to the Benzite High Council. Some members listened with open curiosity, while others, particularly those aligned with Vex, regarded her with thinly veiled suspicion. As the formal meeting concluded, Arch-Counselor Vex approached Willa. "Your story is certainly unique, Your Majesty," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "However, you must understand that assuming the throne is not a simple matter. There are ancient rituals and trials that must be undertaken to prove your right to rule." Willa met his gaze steadily. "I understand, Arch-Counselor. I am prepared to face whatever challenges lie ahead." Vex's eyes narrowed slightly. "Very well. The trials will begin tomorrow at dawn. I suggest you rest and prepare yourself." As Vex walked away, Eric leaned in close to Willa. "I don't trust him," he whispered. "He seems too eager to put you through these trials." Willa nodded, her voice low. "I agree. We'll need to be cautious. Can you work with Leary to gather more information about these rituals? Any advantage could be crucial." Eric squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Consider it done." As they were shown to their quarters, Willa's mind raced with the challenges that lay ahead. She knew that the trials would test not only her Benzite abilities, but also the human skills she had cultivated throughout her life. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and she couldn't afford to fail. The Benzite sun began to set, casting long shadows across the alien cityscape. Willa stood at the window of her quarters, watching as the iridescent towers caught the fading light, transforming the city into a dazzling display of color and movement. Tomorrow she would begin the trials that would determine her right to rule. As she prepared herself for the challenges ahead, Willa couldn't shake the feeling that these tests would push her to her very limits, forcing her to draw on every ounce of her unique heritage and experience. With a deep breath, she turned away from the window, ready to face whatever the dawn might bring. The journey to claim her birthright had only just begun, and Willa was determined to see it through to the end. The journey to claim her birthright had only just begun, and Willa was determined to see it through to the very end. As the first light of dawn broke over the Benzite capital, Willa found herself standing in the ancient arena of Ascension. The air crackled with tension as spectators filled the stands, their iridescent skins shimmering in the early morning light. Across the arena floor stood Arch-Counselor Vex, his silver eyes narrowed in drive. The arena itself seemed to pulse with energy, responding to Willa's presence. As she stepped forward, holographic obstacles and challenges materialized around them, creating a landscape of light and shadow. "Let the trials begin," announced a booming voice echoing through the arena. Without hesitation, Willa launched herself into the first challenge, a treacherous obstacle course that shifted and changed unpredictably. Her human-trained agility gave her an immediate advantage as she leapt and bounded through the course. Vex, relying on traditional Benzite techniques, struggled to keep pace. Willa's iridescent skin glistened with exertion as she vaulted over a suddenly appearing chasm. She could hear Vex's labored breathing behind her, spurring her on. As she cleared the final obstacle, cheers erupted from her supporters in the crowd. The second trial materialized before them, a complex three-dimensional puzzle of swirling energy fields. Vex, drawing on years of political maneuvering, initially took the lead. His fingers danced through the holographic interface, manipulating the energy flows with practiced ease. But Willa's unique perspective allowed her to see patterns that Vex overlooked. She noticed how the energy fields mimicked the flow of information in Benzite communication networks. With this insight, she quickly overtook Vex, completing the puzzle first and earning another round of cheers. As the final trial began, testing leadership and decision-making skills, Willa noticed a change in Vex's demeanor. His eyes darted around nervously, and he reached into his robe, activating a hidden device. Suddenly, the arena's technology went haywire. Holographic simulations became erratic and dangerous. Spectators cried out in alarm as energy surges threatened to spill into the stands. From the sidelines, Eric sprang into action. He recognized the telltale signs of sabotage and quickly set to work. His fingers flew over a nearby control panel, his knowledge of human and Benzite tech allowing him to counteract Vex's device. "Leary," Eric called out, "I need you to stabilize the main power grid while I reroute the holographic projectors." Working in tandem, Eric and Leary managed to bring the arena's systems back under control, but not before a surge of energy knocked Willa off her feet, sending her sprawling across the arena floor. Dazed but determined, Willa pushed herself up. She locked eyes with Vex, who couldn't hide his look of surprise at her resilience. The final challenge materialized around them, a simulated crisis of a Benzite colony under attack by an unknown alien force. Vex immediately stepped forward, his voice ringing out with authority. "We must respond with overwhelming force. Show these aliens the full might of the Benzite Empire." His words resonated with many in the crowd, playing on their fear of outsiders. But Willa saw another way. "Wait," she called out, her voice calm but firm. "We have an opportunity here, not just to defend our people, but to forge new alliances." Willa outlined a plan that combined a show of strength with diplomatic outreach. She demonstrated how to position Benzite forces to protect the colony while opening channels of communication with the alien attackers. As her strategy unfolded in the simulation, the attack was not only repelled, but turned into a peaceful first contact scenario. The holographic aliens, their misunderstanding cleared up, became potential allies rather than enemies. The High Council members watching the trial murmured among themselves, clearly impressed by Willa's innovative approach. Their eyes turned to Vex, who stood seething with terrifying rage. "This is meaningless," Vex shouted. "A true Benzite leader would never—" His words were cut short as the High Council rose to their feet. The eldest among them stepped forward, his voice ringing out across the arena. "We have seen enough. Queen Willa has not only passed the trials, but has shown us a new path forward. She is the rightful ruler of the Benzite Empire." Cheers erupted from the crowd, but they were quickly drowned out by shouts of anger. Vex had signaled to his hidden supporters, triggering a sudden uprising. Purist sympathizers poured out of the stands, clashing with Willa's supporters. In the chaos, Willa caught sight of Admiral Chen. The human officer quickly assessed the situation and made a decision that would change the course of history. "Earth delegation, to me," Chen called out. "Protect Queen Willa and her allies." The unexpected support from the humans turned the tide of the battle. Willa found herself fighting side by side with Eric, their movements in perfect sync as they defended themselves and protected innocent bystanders. As the conflict raged around them, Willa's actions were broadcast across the Benzite Empire. Millions watched as their new queen fought with skill and compassion, defending her people and working in harmony with her human allies. Gradually, the uprising was quelled. Vex and his co-conspirators were apprehended, their plot fully exposed. As the dust settled, Willa stood victorious in the center of the arena, her gaze sweeping over her people. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for the Benzite Empire," she declared, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena and beyond. "An era of unity, progress, and cooperation with our newfound allies from Earth." The crowd's cheers were deafening, but Willa knew that the real work was just beginning. She would need to consolidate her power, reform the corrupt elements of the Benzite government, and navigate the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. As the arena began to clear, Willa found a moment of quiet with Eric. They stood together, looking out over the Benzite capital as the alien sun climbed higher in the sky. "So," Eric said with a small smile, "personal liaison to the Queen of the Benzite Empire. That's quite a promotion." Willa laughed, the sound tinged with both joy and weariness. "You've more than earned it. I couldn't have done this without you, Eric." Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining. As they stood there, the weight of their new responsibility settled over them. But so did the promise of the future they would build together, a future that would bridge two worlds and forge a new galactic order. The Benzite sun continued its ascent, casting a hopeful glow over the city. Willa squeezed Eric's hand, drawing strength from his presence. They had overcome the trials of the arena of ascension, but both knew that greater challenges lay ahead. Yet as they stood there, leaders of a new era and partners in a love that spanned the stars, they were ready to face whatever the future might hold. The Benzite sun continued its ascent, casting a hopeful glow over the city. Willa squeezed Eric's hand, drawing strength from his presence. They had overcome the trials of the arena of ascension, but both knew that greater challenges lay ahead. Yet as they stood there, leaders of a new era and partners in a love that spanned the stars, they were ready to face whatever the future might bring. In the days that followed, the capital city erupted into a flurry of activity. The floating cities of the Benzite homeworld transformed, adorned with shimmering decorations that celebrated Willa's unique heritage. Holographic displays projected images of the new queen alongside symbols of Earth, their iridescent light dancing across the alien architecture. Willa found herself thrust into the heart of Benzite governance, her days filled with meetings and briefings. She sat at the head of a long, crystalline table, surrounded by advisors who watched her every move with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Your Majesty," one of the elder counselors began, his voice tinged with concern, "we've received reports of continued unrest in the outer colonies. Vex's supporters may be defeated, but their ideology lingers." Willa nodded, her brow furrowing. "We need to address this promptly. Leary," she turned to her trusted friend, "I want you to form a specialized intelligence unit. Your task is to root out these dissenters and monitor potential threats. But remember, our goal is unity, not oppression." Leary bowed her head, her skin flickering with commitment. "I understand, Your Majesty. I'll begin immediately." As Willa navigated the complexities of her new role, Eric found himself equally challenged. He stood before a mixed group of humans and Benzites, their faces a study in contrast. The Earth-Benzite Educational Exchange Program will provide unprecedented opportunities for both our species, Eric explained, gesturing to a holographic display. "By learning from each other, we can bridge the gap between our cultures and technologies." A human diplomat raised his hand, his expression skeptical. "And how can we be sure this won't lead to Benzite influence overshadowing our own advancements?" Before Eric could respond, a Benzite official interjected, her voice sharp. "Perhaps the question should be how we can trust humans with our superior knowledge." Eric took a deep breath, steadying himself. "It's precisely these attitudes that we need to overcome. Our strengths lie in our differences. Together, we can achieve far more than either species could alone." The room fell into a tense silence, broken only when Eric's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "In fact, I have a proposal that might interest both sides, a joint human-Benzite space exploration initiative." The idea sparked immediate interest. Eric quickly outlined his vision, drawing on his experience as a cargo pilot to explain the potential benefits. As he spoke, he could see the excitement growing in both human and Benzite eyes. While Eric worked to build bridges between their peoples, Willa found herself facing a more immediate crisis. She burst into the command center, her skin pulsing with urgency. "What's the situation?" she demanded, her eyes fixed on the large holographic display dominating the room. Admiral Chen, who had remained on Benzite Prime as part of the Earth delegation, stepped forward. "We've received a distress signal from one of your outer colonies, Your Majesty. They're under attack by an unknown alien species." Willa's mind raced, calculating potential responses. She turned to her advisors, noting the fear and anticipation in their eyes. "Convene an emergency meeting. We need to decide our course of action immediately." Hours later, after heated debates and tense discussions, Willa stood before a joint assembly of Benzite and Earth officials. Her voice rang out, clear and resolute. "I have decided to lead a joint Benzite-Earth task force to investigate and respond to this attack. This crisis threatens not just the Benzite Empire, but potentially Earth as well. Together, we stand a better chance of facing this unknown threat." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others whispered their dissent. Willa could feel the weight of her decision settling on her shoulders, but she stood tall, her gaze unwavering. As preparations for the mission began, Willa found a moment alone with Eric. They stood in her private chambers, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. "Are you sure about this?" Eric asked, his voice low. "Leading the mission yourself is risky." Willa turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "I have to do this, Eric. I can't ask others to face a danger I'm not willing to face myself." Eric nodded, understanding. He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to touch her face. The air between them crackled with tension, the physical attraction they'd been suppressing threatening to overwhelm them. Willa leaned into his touch, her breath catching. For a moment, they forgot about the impending mission, the weight of their responsibilities. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, hands exploring, bodies pressing close. But reality intruded all too soon. A chime from the communication system broke them apart, leaving them breathless and frustrated. "Your Majesty," a voice called out, "the task force is ready for your inspection." Willa stepped back, smoothing her clothing. She looked at Eric, seeing her own mix of desire and duty reflected in his eyes. "We should go," she said softly. Eric nodded, his voice rough. "Duty calls." As they left the room, the weight of their responsibilities settled back onto their shoulders. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and the unknown threat loomed on the horizon. But for now, they had a mission to prepare for, a task force to lead, and a galaxy of uncertainty to face. Explore. Willa's heart raced with anticipation as she gazed out at the vast expanse of space before them. The combined Benzite-Earth armada moved through the darkness, a formidable force of sleek Benzite vessels and Earth's most advanced warships. From the command center of the flagship, Willa oversaw the final preparations, her iridescent skin glowing with drive. "All systems are go, Your Majesty," reported a Benzite officer, her fingers dancing across a holographic display. Willa nodded, then turned to Eric, who was coordinating communication between the human and Benzite crews. "How are we looking on your end?" "Integration between our systems is holding steady," Eric replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There are still some translation issues, but we're working through them." As they spoke, a young human ensign approached, her expression a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Your Majesty, Commander, we've detected an anomaly during our routine scan of nearby systems." Willa's antennae twitched with interest. "Show me." The ensign brought up a holographic display of a small, uninhabited planet. Strange energy readings pulsed across its surface, unlike anything Willa had seen before. "This could be crucial to understanding our adversaries," Willa mused. She made a quick decision. "Prepare a landing party. We're going to investigate." Eric's eyes widened. "Willa, are you sure that's wise? We don't know what's down there." "Which is precisely why we need to find out," she countered. "Assemble a team of our best specialists, both human and Benzite. You're coming with me." Within the hour, their shuttle touched down on the planet's surface. The air was thin but breathable, and the landscape was dotted with strange, crystalline formations that seemed to hum with energy. As they ventured further, the team came across the ruins of an ancient civilization. The architecture was a fascinating blend of organic and technological elements, bearing striking similarities to both Benzite and the unknown alien designs. "These structures," Eric breathed, running his hand along a wall covered in intricate glowing symbols. "They're incredible." Willa nodded, her skin pulsing with excitement. "And familiar somehow. Let's press on." They made their way deeper into the ruins, their instruments scanning every surface for clues. Suddenly, Willa's foot triggered a hidden mechanism. The ground beneath them shuddered, and a massive door slid open, revealing a chamber bathed in soft blue light. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, topped with a pulsating orb. As Willa approached, the orb flared to life, projecting a holographic image that filled the room. The image showed beings that looked startlingly similar to Benzites, but with subtle differences, sharper features, a more metallic sheen to their skin. A voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in an ancient dialect that Willa could barely understand. "It's a recording," she gasped, her mind racing to translate. "These beings, they're Benzites, or rather, they were." As the message played on, the shocking truth unfolded before them. The attackers they faced were indeed a long-lost branch of the Benzite species, separated millennia ago by a catastrophic event. This faction, calling themselves the Nexar, had evolved along a different path, developing a society focused on aggressive expansion and technological domination. "They see us as weak," Willa translated, her voice tight with emotion. "Unworthy of our shared heritage." Eric placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch grounding her. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" Willa nodded, her mind already formulating a plan. "We need to use this information. If we can reach out to them, appeal to our shared ancestry." "You're thinking of trying to communicate?" Eric asked, his tone cautious. "More than that," Willa replied, her eyes fixed on the ancient technology around them. "I believe we can use this to broadcast a message directly to their fleet, offer them a chance for peaceful reunification." Eric's expression grew concerned. "Willa, the risks are necessary," she cut him off gently. "This could prevent a devastating war." As they discussed the possibilities, one of the Benzite scientists approached, her skin flickering with nervous energy. "Your Majesty, I've analyzed the technology here. It's possible to interface with it, but it would require a significant amplification of your natural Benzite abilities. The procedure would be dangerous." Willa straightened, her decision already made. "Prepare the procedure. We don't have much time." Eric's face hardened. "Willa, no, it's too risky. We can find another way." "There is no other way," Willa argued, her voice rising. "Every moment we delay, we risk more lives." Their eyes locked, the air between them charged with tension. In that moment, the weight of their responsibilities clashed with their personal feelings, threatening to tear them apart. Before either could speak again, an alarm blared through the ruins. A voice crackled over their communicators. "Your Majesty, Commander, the Nexar fleet has arrived at the edge of the system. Our armada is taking up defensive positions." Willa and Eric exchanged a look, their argument momentarily forgotten in the face of imminent danger. "Prepare the amplification procedure," Willa ordered, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "And get me a direct link to our fleet. It's time to put our plan into action." As the team scrambled to set up the necessary equipment, Eric pulled Willa aside. His voice was low, intense. "I still think this is a mistake, but if you're determined to do this, I'll support you. I'll take command of a human fighter squadron, provide tactical support from orbit." Willa nodded, her hand briefly squeezing his. "Thank you, Eric. Be careful up there." As Eric departed for his ship, Willa steeled herself for what was to come. She lay back on a makeshift surgical table, surrounded by a mix of ancient alien technology and modern medical equipment. The Benzite scientist who had analyzed the ruins approached, a complex device in her hands. "This will enhance your natural abilities, Your Majesty," she explained. "But the strain on your body will be immense. Are you certain you want to proceed?" Willa took a deep breath, thinking of the battle about to unfold in space, of the lives hanging in the balance. "I'm certain. Begin the procedure." As the device activated, Willa felt a surge of energy course through her body. Her senses sharpened, expanding beyond anything she had ever experienced. Through the amplified connection, she could feel the ancient technology around her, the history of her people stretching back millennia. With a final surge of grit, Willa reached out with her mind, preparing to broadcast her message to the Nexar fleet. As she did so, she became aware of Eric's presence in orbit, his concern for her a tangible thing, even across the vast distance of space. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance as Willa opened her mind to the cosmos, ready to make her plea for peace. Peace. Her consciousness expanded, reaching out across the vast distances of space, searching for the minds of the Nexara. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ancient chamber. Willa's eyes snapped open, her connection severed. The Benzite scientist monitoring her vitals shouted, "Her neural activity is spiking! We need to shut it down!" Before anyone could react, Willa's body convulsed violently, her skin pulsing with an intense, unnatural light. She let out a piercing scream that echoed through the ruins, then fell silent, her form going limp on the makeshift surgical table. In orbit, Eric's fighter squadron had just engaged the outer defenses of the Nexara fleet when his communications system crackled to life. "Commander, we've lost contact with the surface team. Queen Willa's last transmission was cut off mid-sentence." Eric's heart raced as he processed the information. Without hesitation, he barked orders to his squadron. "Delta Wing, take point. I'm heading planetside." He banked his fighter sharply, breaking formation and plummeting through the planet's atmosphere. The ship's hull glowed red-hot as Eric pushed it to its limits, expertly maneuvering through turbulent air currents. On the surface, chaos reigned. The ancient technology hummed ominously, arcs of energy coursing between the crystalline structures. The Benzite scientist who had overseen the amplification procedure frantically worked to stabilize Willa's condition. Eric's fighter touched down with a bone-jarring thud. He leaped from the cockpit, sprinting towards the ruins. As he entered the chamber, his eyes locked onto Willa's motionless form. "Status report," he demanded, rushing to her side. The Benzite scientist looked up, her skin flickering with distress. The amplification overwhelmed her system. "We've managed to stabilize her vital signs, but she's unresponsive. We need to get her to advanced medical facilities immediately." Eric checked Willa's pulse, relief washing over him as he felt its weak but steady rhythm. He activated his communicator. "This is Commander Chen. I need an emergency medical evac at my location now." As he waited for a response, the ground beneath him shuddered. The ancient technology pulsed with increasing intensity, the air thick with crackling energy. A small team of Benzite and human scientists burst into the chamber, led by a Benzite woman Eric recognized as Leary, one of Willa's top researchers. "Commander," Leary called out, her antennae twitching with urgency, "we've analyzed the data from Queen Willa's transmission. There's a fail-safe mechanism built into this technology. It could neutralize the Nexara's weapons, but..." "But what?" Eric pressed, his voice sharp with tension. Leary's skin pulsed with anxiety. "It would temporarily disable all Benzite technology within range, including our own fleet's life support systems." Eric's mind raced, weighing their options. The battle in orbit raged on, and without a decisive action, both Earth and the Benzite Empire stood to lose everything. "Can we modify the signal?" he asked, an idea forming. "Use our human tech to target only the Nexara ships?" Leary's eyes widened. "Theoretically, yes, but it would require Queen Willa's unique connection to the system. In her current state..." Eric looked down at Willa's pale, still form. He knew what she would want, to protect their people at any cost. But could he bring himself to risk her life? The ground shook again, more violently this time. Debris rained down from the chamber's ceiling. They were running out of time. Eric made his decision. "Do it. Make the modifications. I'll wake her." As Leary and her team set to work, Eric gently cradled Willa's face in his hands. "Willa," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I need you to come back to me. Our people need you." Willa's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. Her gaze was unfocused, her voice barely audible. "Eric?" He explained the situation quickly, his heart breaking as he watched persistence fill her eyes, despite her weakened state. "Help me up," she rasped. Eric supported her as she shakily got to her feet. Leary approached, holding a complex device cobbled together from both human and Benzite technology. "It's ready, Your Majesty," Leary said. "But the strain on your system will be immense. There's no guarantee." Willa cut her off with a weak wave of her hand. "The risk is necessary. Let's proceed." Eric helped Willa to the central pedestal, where she placed her hands on the pulsating orb. As the modified signal surged through her, Willa's body arched in pain. a silent scream frozen on her lips. Eric held her steady, his own body trembling with the effort and emotion. "Stay with me, Willa," he murmured. "Just a little longer." In orbit, the effect was immediate. Nexar ships began to lose power, their weapons falling silent. The combined Benzite Earth fleet, only minimally affected, quickly gained the upper hand. But on the planet's surface, a new crisis emerged. The failsafe, more powerful than anticipated, had triggered a chain reaction in the planet's core. The ground heaved and buckled beneath their feet. "We need to evacuate now," Leary shouted over the din of crumbling ruins. Eric looked at Willa, still connected to the ancient system. Moving her could cause a catastrophic backlash. The choice before him was agonizing: save himself or stay with the woman he loved. Without hesitation, Eric tightened his grip on Willa. "Get your team out of here, Leary. That's an order." As Leary and the others fled, Eric held Willa close, feeling the heat of the planet's core rising beneath them. The connection to the ancient technology slowly faded, and Willa collapsed into his arms, completely drained. With mere minutes left before the planet's destruction, Eric scooped Willa into his arms and ran for his fighter. The ground cracked and split behind them, gouts of superheated gas erupting into the air. Eric strapped Willa into the co-pilot seat, then jumped into the cockpit. The fighter's engines roared to life as he pushed them to full power. They lifted off, narrowly avoiding a chasm that opened where they had been moments before. The ascent was a nightmare of turbulence and debris. Eric's hands flew over the controls, his years of experience tested to their limits. Willa stirred beside him, her eyes fluttering open as they breached the atmosphere. The sight that greeted them was one of controlled chaos. The Nexar fleet drifted powerless, surrounded by Benzite and Earthships. Willa weakly grasped Eric's hand, a silent acknowledgement of their shared ordeal. As they watched, the planet below finally succumbed to the failsafe's effects. It imploded in a brilliant flash of light and energy, the shockwave buffeting their already strained fighter. Eric's communication system crackled to life. "Commander Chen, this is Admiral Chen. Do you copy?" "I copy, Admiral," Eric responded, his voice hoarse. "Requesting immediate medical assistance for Queen Willa?" "Acknowledged, Commander. Bringing you in now." As their damaged fighter limped towards the Admiral's command ship, Eric glanced at Willa. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow but steady. They had survived, but at what cost? And what challenges lay ahead as they faced the aftermath of their bold strategy? The fighter bay doors of the command ship yawned open before them, a beacon of safety in the chaos of space. Eric guided their battered craft inside, his mind already racing with the monumental tasks that lay ahead. As medical teams rushed towards them, he knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in the saga of human-Benzite relations, one that would shape the destiny of both their peoples for generations to come. As the fighter bay doors closed behind them, a flurry of activity erupted. Medical teams swarmed the damaged craft, carefully extracting Willa from the co-pilot seat. Eric stumbled out after her, his legs shaky from the intense flight. "Get her to the medical bay immediately," he ordered, his voice hoarse, "and prepare a full status report on the fleet and the Nexar situation." Eric followed the medical team as they rushed Willa through the corridors of the command ship. The adrenaline that had sustained him during their harrowing escape began to fade, replaced by a bone-deep weariness and concern for Willa's condition. In the medical bay, a team of human and Benzite doctors worked in seamless coordination, their movements precise and efficient. Eric watched from the sidelines, his heart racing as he observed the pale, still form of the woman he loved. Hours passed in a blur of tense waiting and hurried updates. The Nexar fleet remained disabled, surrounded by Benzite and Earthships. Negotiations were already underway, with the sudden shift in power dynamics forcing the Nexar leadership to reconsider their position. As the first rays of artificial dawn illuminated the medical bay, Willa stirred, her eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking out Eric. He was at her side in an instant, grasping her hand gently. "Welcome back," he murmured, relief evident in his voice. Willa's skin slowly regained its iridescent glow as she took in her surroundings. "The Nexara?" she asked, her voice weak but determined. Before Eric could respond, a communication officer entered the medical bay. "Your Majesty, Commander Chen," she said, her tone respectful but urgent. "The Nexara leadership is requesting a formal audience with Queen Willa." Willa attempted to sit up, but Eric gently restrained her. "You need to rest," he insisted. "No," Willa countered, her voice growing stronger. "This may be our only chance for true peace. I must meet with them." The medical team exchanged concerned glances, but they knew better than to argue with their queen. They quickly prepared Willa for the meeting, outfitting her with portable medical devices to monitor her condition. A hastily prepared conference room became the stage for this historic encounter. Holographic projections allowed leaders from all three factions to attend, creating an atmosphere of both intimacy and grandeur. Willa, supported by Eric, took her place at the head of the table. The Nexara representatives appeared wary, their postures tense. Willa, despite her weakened state, exuded an aura of quiet strength and grit. "Esteemed leaders of the Nexara," she began, her voice clear and resonant, "we stand at a crossroads. The path of conflict has led us to the brink of mutual destruction. I propose an alternative, a road to reunification and lasting peace." Murmurs rippled through the assembled holograms. Eric watched the reactions carefully, his tactical mind assessing potential allies and opponents. Willa continued, outlining a bold plan for reintegration. She offered the Nexara a chance to rejoin Benzite society while maintaining aspects of their unique culture. Her proposal included safeguards to protect the interests of all parties, demonstrating a deep understanding of the complexities involved. The negotiations that followed were intense, with centuries of separation and mistrust to overcome. Eric found himself called upon frequently, his human perspective offering fresh insights into seemingly intractable problems. "Consider a phased integration," he suggested during a particularly heated exchange. "Begin with cultural and scientific exchanges, then gradually expand into shared governance structures." The idea caught the attention of both Benzite and Nexar representatives, sparking a new round of discussions. Willa shot Eric a grateful look, her hand briefly squeezing his under the table. Days passed in a whirlwind of proposals, counteroffers, and careful diplomacy. Willa's strength grew with each passing hour, her natural radiance returning as hope for a peaceful resolution blossomed. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of negotiations, a historic treaty took shape. The Nexara agreed to a gradual reintegration process, with provisions to preserve their cultural heritage while embracing renewed ties with their Benzite cousins. As the leaders gathered to sign the document, a palpable sense of relief and cautious optimism filled the room. Willa's signature, applied with a steady hand, marked the beginning of a new era for her people. With the immediate crisis averted, attention turned to the future. Willa and Eric found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity, preparing for their return to the Benzite homeworld and Willa's long-delayed coronation. As their ship broke orbit, leaving behind the remains of the ancient planet that had nearly claimed their lives, Eric stood with Willa on the observation deck, the stars stretched out before them, a canvas of infinite possibilities. "Are you ready for this?" Eric asked softly, his arm around Willa's waist. Willa leaned into him, her skin shimmering with renewed vitality. "With you by my side," she replied, "I'm ready for anything." The ship accelerated, carrying them towards a future neither could have imagined when their paths first crossed. As the Benzite homeworld grew larger in the view screen, Willa and Eric shared a quiet moment of reflection, aware that their greatest challenges and triumphs still lay ahead.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.